I don't know how I want to start this. Let me commence here. So, you just gotta take sometimes a deep breath.
Transcendental meditate.
I have peppermint essential oils.
One with the force.
Going right now? Okay. So, I think we're just about ready to start here. First, I want to say welcome everybody. We are going to be doing another episode of My Next Guest. As you can see, I have a new guest here, and he is mine. His name is Jake Toft. He's a good friend. He is a compatriot. He is a comrade. Am I allowed to say comrade? I don't know if I'm allowed to say that. But
Sure.
he is a good friend of mine, like I was saying. We've known each other for a couple of years now, not for too long. But would it have been 2017? Technically, we met in 2016.
Probably, but we've probably been known each other, been
was
friends for about 3 years,
Yes.
something like that.
Yeah. But today, I have Jake here to talk about something very cool, and I think something very relevant. Right now, for reference, for those of you who are recording this on Friday, February 12th in 2021. So we are still in pandemic mode.
Month 11.
Yes, we are traveled though. The last episode of the podcast that I recorded was from the good old Moorhead, Minnesota. We have traveled about 250 miles southeast of Moorhead, and we are in the grand Minneapolis, Minnesota.
The frozen tundra of Minneapolis, Minnesota.
Warmer than Moorhead though.
That is true. That is true.
It's about 10 degrees warmer, so
Which is still about 15 below.
Yes. Yes, but I mean, I've loved living in the Twin Cities. I moved down here about 7 months ago, but I digress. We're talking today about Jake and his experience as a teacher. I actually met Jake in college, just to tell you a little bit about how my perspective of Jake has changed. We were in the same program, both studying social studies education. We were in a bunch of classes together. Jake had very long hair. He looked like Garth from Wayne's World back in the day.
Went to him for Halloween one year too, with a very appropriate Wayne. Shout out Christian Einerson.
Yes, of course. There's a good picture somewhere on social media, I'm sure, to be found. But now you have, we both did graduate. We both got our teaching license, and for a while we were both teachers, substitute teachers at the Moorhead School District during the spring of 2020, I should say. And I guess I can stop talking for now, for a moment, I should say. But I want to let you talk a little bit about your experiences as a teacher and going into the field in this time.
Yeah. So, like Levi said, I student taught a semester before him in the spring of 2019 in the West Fargo Public School District, which is where you student taught as well, correct?
Yes. I did a practicum in West Fargo, but I was at Fargo North High School.
Yep. And then I student taught in West Fargo, and then the following year, 2019 into 20, I substitute taught throughout the Moorhead School District, working in some instances with some one-on-one students who are being transitioned to alternative programming, and then as well as some time in the middle school there. And then eventually, both Levi and I, Levi to an extent, we spent some time at the alternative school in Moorhead, up until March of last year, which, as we all know, that's when COVID hit. And I was basically not really needed after that point, which was totally understandable because they didn't need substitute teachers. And so I was basically unemployed for 2 months, just kind of hanging out, actually spending most of my time back in my hometown of Brainerd, Minnesota. And this was while I was living with Levi. We lived with each other for about 7 months. 7?
Yeah, it was about half a year or so.
Yeah. And I actually spent a majority of time in Brainerd just because, like a lot of us, I didn't have anything going on really. So, yeah.
Very nice. So I guess one thing that I wanted to ask, now you did about a year and a half or a year of subbing after you graduated, and now you're moved into or transitioned into more of a full-time teaching role, and this only happened in August of this year, right, is when you were hired? So you're kind of hired mid-pandemic.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, obviously we're both into education, and why I wanted to really talk with you is just to kind of document what it's like now as a teacher. You're going into your first teaching job. Now you've substitute taught, but for the viewers at home or just other people who maybe aren't super familiar with how education works, like as a substitute teacher, you're bouncing around from room to room. And I know you worked a little bit more long term at the alternative school last year, but I also know you're still working with different students, and it's not like you're concrete in the school. So now that you are finally getting into that position for the first time, you're not even in school, right? So I guess now you're working in Stillwater, right?
Yes.
But I know it's maybe not. Is it the Stillwater School District, but it's not in Stillwater?
Correct.
Is that okay?
It is the Stillwater School District, but my school is located in Lake Elmo.
Okay.
So,
And you are 7th grade social studies?
Correct.
Is that?
Yep.
Do you teach different classes, or is it all one class throughout the whole day?
but it's just that one course, just
Okay.
7th grade U.S. history.
Okay. And is that, out of curiosity, the only like social studies the kids get that year?
Yep, I'm their only history teacher that
Okay.
year. Yep.
Very nice.
And then in 8th grade, they have one semester of global studies.
Okay.
And then that's other than that, it's just
like geography or something.
well, geography kind of goes in with the global studies. Other than that, it's like other electives. And
Oh, I
classes
see.
like
I
that.
see. Okay, very cool. So, as part of your transition now into your first full-time job, did you remind me, and just for the people at home as well, were you in class day one with the students and then you transitioned to online, or how did that all work?
So we are actually on currently our 3rd learning model this year. So we began the year in person.
Okay.
And what we called it was essentially a bubble format. So I had the same about 12 to 13 kids all day long.
Yeah.
And so I had an A group of kids. So I had my A kids on Mondays and Wednesdays, our B kids on Tuesdays and Thursdays, and then on Fridays would serve as like a C day, where all of the students would be learning from home that day in an independent format. So I really only had about 24 to 25 students that I saw and knew.
And so
And I got to know them very, very well because I was
you were with
all
them
day long.
And so you had 2 groups of kids then, right, that you
Yes.
were with depending on the day. And those kids weren't bouncing from class to class like a normal middle schooler would, but they were in the same class all day long for all of their subjects.
Yes.
So you kind of just brokered their online, or not brokered, but you were advising or supervising, really, their online work when they're working with the other class, like, materials and with the other assignments that they were working on, right?
Yes. So to be honest, I was essentially like a glorified study hall teacher. You could almost say, once we got to the point in the day where it would be my class, like U.S. history, I would do some teaching. But the other parts of the day, all of our other lessons were posted online from the other teachers, because there's the kids that were in the other teachers' rooms were still my students.
Yeah.
But I didn't know them yet.
No, they would just log on to Mr. Toft's U.S. history page and complete the assignments.
They would watch the video I had, and then we would occasionally send kids to other rooms, like quickly to get help.
Yeah.
But
even then, it's all about containment.
Yeah.
And not having all of those communications and
transit.
exactly.
With COVID. So so I really got to know my group, those 24 or so, very, very well the first month or.
And that's got to be just so weird because, well, it's weird, but also maybe nice in a way where the students are first timers at this too.
Mm-hmm.
So, obviously you're kind of a rookie at being just a classroom teacher in general, but in a way you're all on a level playing field with you and the students and the other teachers as well, because they're doing this all for the first time.
A lot of the day would be, no, I shouldn't say a lot of the day, but there'd always be a point in the day where we would just kind of talk about with the kids, like how things were going, like what could be improved, what could be,
well, that's good.
what worked, what isn't working, that kind of stuff.
Getting their feedback, and I guess
how their learning was going.
Yeah.
Because some of them would tell you, some would keep it inside, not really say it.
I think that's something that I found in my minimal experience in the classroom. That it's really a team activity, learning and operating like a class that is at all successful. So that's really cool. I'm interested, or that is interesting to hear about some of the little details of that. I wanted to ask too, so have you ever had a student that had COVID in your class, or like they were out because they had COVID and it spread to other students, or how did that all work?
So eventually after our bubble format.
Oh yeah, that was the first learning.
Yep, that was our first model, and then we switched to, we still had the hybrid, so we still had A students one day, B students the other, but then the kids were moving around to their different classes, so I was actually able to teach the kids.
Okay, yeah.
And while I only saw them in person twice a week, it was hugely beneficial to be able to actually see them.
Yeah.
And that was, and just with the movement of kids, I never had any confirmed positive cases in my class, but there were multiple kids who had to quarantine because of exposure.
Yeah, like contract tracing and
so,
stuff like that.
So there were some days where I had very, very few. I mean, the classes were already pretty small.
Yeah.
But there's some days I literally had like 3 kids in there.
And not much work gets done when there's 3 kids in class, right?
I mean, yes and no.
Okay.
I really got to know those kids that day, which I feel like is part of the work, is getting to know them, especially since 2 out of the 3 were not in my bubble, so I was just getting to know them. But yeah, it definitely was different than any traditional learning format, which, to be honest, it was almost felt similar to my experience last year at the alternative school, because the classes are very small.
Yeah, that's
so
true.
It really wasn't too, other than the masks and the distancing, it really wasn't too drastically different from that.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah.
Well, and now another thing that I wanted to ask was, as far as you making relationships with students, have you even seen all of the kids that you taught, like, or that all of the kids that have you as a teacher at this point?
For the most part. So there's also kids who have elected to be online only for this entire year, and they watch my videos, I grade their work, but I don't go on to Zoom calls with them, because we've got, like, they're the online only kids, and then we've got what's called, like, on the dial, and those are the kids that move so after that second model, after our hybrid learning, back in November, we switched to distance learning, which we have been in since then. And those on the dial kids have been in my Zooms for the entire time, whereas the online only kids I have not talked to. I will change emails sometimes if they have questions. I've had a couple hop on to Zoom just to help them out, but a large majority of them I haven't. And they work with other online only coordinators. So. And
now I am curious to ask, like, from your perspective, and then maybe just from what you've heard from other teachers as well, because I know it's your first year still. Would you say the kids' learning and their engagement has been affected drastically by this? Because I know, obviously, the first thought is, like, of course, right? But I think, like, in my exposure to education and in the classroom, I was surprised at how many kids get by without really ever learning the material, right? Like, or without really ever engaging with class. So I get maybe our fears are worse than what it actually is, but I wanted to get your take on that.
So I do think, and I wasn't there for distance learning last year, but from what I've heard, this year has been much better compared to the spring, because nobody knew what was going on.
Then it was just total crash.
It was total chaos.
Yeah.
And there was no structure necessarily, and that's what they've said they felt this year has been. You know, they've got, all right, you've got Zoom, first hour history with Mr. Toft at 8 a.m. You've got third hour English. You've got that then. Like, it feels a little more like school in a sense. And they definitely aren't learning as much as they would in a normal year, because it's hard to make good material in this format. Like,
that's
to really
point. The lessons that your 20-year vet teacher has do not exactly transfer online, right?
And that's where the people on my team have been such huge help, letting me utilize a lot of the lessons that they've created.
Yep.
But that's the thing, is that most teachers have said this year that this is the most that they have spent in terms of having, like, an uneven home work-life balance.
Yeah, like just the time they're spending outside of their 8 to 4 sort of schedule.
Yes, because they haven't had any time. I mean, I guess I should say that they've had to create everything from scratch, essentially.
Yeah.
And it's been really difficult because I myself am a discussion-based teacher. Like, that's how a lot of the stuff, the way I taught during student teaching was, all right, this side of the class, you're going to take this perspective. This side of the class, you're going to take this perspective on a topic. Trying to name a history topic that's I guess.
I mean, you were talking about the Progressive Era.
Yeah.
A big thing during the Progressive Era was exactly how many immigrants to allow and from where and what kind of work visas that they would be allowed.
And so that'd be a thing that I would love to talk about, because as 7th graders, that's the first time you can really get into those issues a bit, and you're not going to dig super deep into it because you need to provide the materials for them.
You could spend a lifetime on social issues and the complexities of them, right? So like a 12 or 13-year-old's version of that is going to be less nuanced.
Yes, and more often it would come from what they know from their parents, which is how everything. I mean, at that age, nature. You're formulating your own opinions, and that's completely understandable. And that's how I would have loved to have taught a lot of this material this year, would be through different examples like that. And we haven't been able to really do that because we're over Zoom. And there are like breakout rooms that I'll use sometimes where you put them into there. But the other factor is, in these classes, I've got my A and B kids mixed, and a lot of them don't know each other because it's a big school. It's a very large school district, and they would have their A-Day classes, and then they'd have their B-Day classes. They've been
separated, and even last year they didn't get a full year of in-person, and I remember even like when I was in middle school at Moorhead School Districts, which isn't even that big, I was still meeting new people by 8th and 9th grade that I've never had classes with before, so I understand that there are kids just don't know each other.
Yeah, so, and it's definitely been harder too, because a lot of them have their screens off, which I don't force them to. I think that's a battle that I think very few people would be able to succeed in. And I also understand that a lot of kids are conscious of their home life. Some of them might not want what's going on in the background
understood
on there. So most of them have their screens off, some have them on. So it is harder to get engagement through that way.
I mean, it's like kind of fighting, not an impossible battle, and I don't mean to construe education during this time as like a lost cause or anything, but realistically, you're working with 12 and 13-year-olds in 7th grade, right? I remember what it was like, at least a little bit, to be a 12 and 13-year-old kid. There's no way I'm getting much done if I am able to hang out at home all day, especially if my parents have to work and aren't able to kind of be monitoring what I'm doing all day. Like, I'm sure you're running into that.
All the distractions, like, I've heard TVs on in the background where I'd have to mute a kid. Numerous pets, numerous younger siblings, which I don't tell them to not. Like the first day I was like, I know we all got dogs and cats, let's see them. I want to see them. So I had them all show their pets. There's always seems to be some little sibling who's running around doing something.
That's fun. That's a way to kind of personally connect with students.
And like honestly, I always address it and talk about like, oh, how old's your sibling or something like that, because I think that's more important right now than their school. Then not saying their schoolwork isn't important, but I think making those connections is so important because they're harder to come by.
And in order to get good schoolwork done, you need to have those kind of personal connections and that trust and rapport and respect built with the students. And I feel like the biggest thing that I learned in college was the importance of the physical and cultural classroom that you build when you're a teacher. And both of those things are severely hampered by COVID and not being able to be in person and kind of being forced to be on Zoom. So it's tricky, but sorry.
And I should add too, like, I rarely keep them on the Zoom for the entire time, because they would go, like, it just wouldn't work. And I've had this, sitting through, working with my teams and like in PLCs and stuff, it's hard to sit through an hour-long Zoom meeting for anybody.
After an hour long, I start tuning out.
So, and our classes are 40 minutes, and I usually just intro the topic for about 10 minutes, ask a few questions, and then the rest of the time they can hop off and work, and then I keep the Zoom on, and if they have questions, they can hop back in. So it's worked kind of well. I do think we are at the stage of pretty much everybody being a little burnt out from it. Just because it's been December, January, about 3 months now.
Fully online for your school?
Fully online. And I think kind of and we actually have the dates set for when we're planning on returning.
Yeah.
So I think it's kind of seeing that now. That's about a month away. We're kind of
coming over the horizon.
We can see the light
At the very end of the tunnel.
Yeah, and I try to remind the kids of that. I'm like, hey, we got one more month. Let's work through this. Yeah. Let's get some good stuff, so that way we can have a great last couple months.
And hopefully you'll be able to stay in person, right, for the rest. Because it's only by the time you get back, it's going to be mid-March. Yeah. That means mid-April, mid-May, maybe 2.5, 3.
So we go into like the first week of June.
Okay, so maybe 3 months.
So about 2.5.
Yeah. More likely. Well, you got spring break too, potentially.
We got a 1 week spring break the last week in March. But
and then
realistically, that's
days
the only
off though for Easter holiday weekend.
Yeah,
they usually give 1 or 2 days.
Like the Friday and the Monday, probably. But other than that, it's just Memorial Day, I think.
That's fair. So well,
hopefully we'll make the most of it.
Yeah, best of luck to you guys the rest of the school year. I know everybody's hearts goes out to all the teachers, and especially as somebody who, I'm not currently a teacher. I have been, and I know a little bit. I know there's plenty of people with more experience than I, but I know the tip of the iceberg, and I can really empathize with your guys' struggle. But you're fighting the good fight.
Thank you. Yeah, and to be honest, as a first-year teacher, like, it's been very, very challenging, but I think it could be. It's probably definitely equally as hard for the veteran teachers because I don't know any better. Like, this is my first time doing this. So I'm going to figure that out hopefully next year when we are full in person. Mm-hmm. But these people who have been teaching for years had to flip the script on what they normally do.
That's a good point. Yeah, no, that's
and
fair.
They do probably have better skill. Not probably. They definitely do have better skills at adapting than I do just because they've been doing it longer.
Yeah.
But they're basically were asked to change, and like a lot of other jobs too, change almost everything about how you do this.
Yeah, exactly.
And make it
and school needs to resume in 2 weeks, right? Like last year when they had to make that decision, it's not like they were able to take off school for 3 months before they could figure out what they were going to do. Mm-hmm. I remember in Moorhead, because we were both, like we said earlier, working for Moorhead school districts at the time.
We were kind of just as a sub too, you're kind of just like in the
you're in limbo anyway.
Whatever you want to call it, just because we didn't know what was expected.
Yeah, exactly.
So
but anyway, I don't know. I think that's all I have for you right away for questions. I mean, do you have anything else you want to say for the viewers? Maybe one more thing. When's your vaccine coming, man? Have you heard anything about it?
I have not heard anything.
Well,
I know a couple teachers who have been getting it, and to be honest, I've filled out all the info and stuff and all that.
Yeah.
But I would almost, again, feel bad because I've got some coworkers who are in their 50s and 60s.
Yeah, that's fair.
I want them to get it before me because I feel it shouldn't
be. If you're in class, my opinion is the teachers should be getting the vaccine just as soon as they're not maybe quite as volatile, or their environment isn't as volatile as like a healthcare worker, but you're right up there on the front lines doing stuff for the community. So like in my mind, and this is a question for Mr. Waltz, good Governor Waltz.
I'm a social studies teacher, so I stay unbiased. I'm right down the middle. That's what I always tell the kids. I'm here to present the facts, and I'm here to let you formulate your own opinion.
Jake's about to die serving the great state of Minnesota in the classroom. I've damned you to a fate of death by COVID. I'm sorry, but I mean,
the host.
Anyway, thank you, though, Jake, so much for coming on today. It was absolutely a pleasure.
Thank you for having me.
It was a wonderful conversation. I'll have to have you on again. Maybe towards the end of the school year, once you're wrapping up, we can do a big end of school palooza.
We could either do that, or I could give my WrestleMania preview in late March when WrestleMania season comes around.
Oh, true. Maybe I'll have to.
I'm a big pro wrestling nerd.
Yes. I know that you actually been on or had your own pro wrestling podcast.
I did. I used to. I'm not gonna promote it because it did die a couple years ago. I was the former co-host of a podcast called "It's Not Fake, It's Scripted." We talked about professional wrestling.
Okay.
That's died out now. The other co-host, Jared Ribedo, is now a sports writer for the Alexandria Echo Press. So his journalism career has gone to new heights, whereas
That's
I
fair.
chose a different path. But
Yeah, for sure.
yeah.
Well, anyway, sir, thank you again. And I think that just about wraps it up.
How do you end this?
I mean,
Is it
I
like
don't-
Nardwar? Like do you
It's-
say like doot
Nardwar!
doot doot doot
No.
doot?
I just usually say thank you guys for watching. We're gonna be coming at you with another episode at some point. You know, I'm trying to record once a month, and we'll see if it ever gets to higher than that. If I ever actually post things with regularity, but
Hit
you know,
subscribe.
hit subscribe, hit the like button, hit the dab. You know what I'm saying? Any sort of I don't know. Thank you. Thank you guys for watching, and peace out.